keep striving for this religion that we preach. Keep pushing for nothing's ever out of reach. Because the time we keep on driving, it's all that much we go. The time we keep on fighting, and these colors I wear will be sold through the skins of my soul.
Hi and welcome to the Luton Town International Podcast. My name is Gavin, not joined by my regulars Nick and Alex this week. Nick is off trying to get his next Talk Sport segment, so he's in touch with his agent. He's apparently too big for us now, big time Charlie. And Alex is probably sitting somewhere in his underwear watching reruns of Star Trek Picard, who knows? But I am joined by a professional this week. It's nice to have a fellow professional on the podcast, Jarrod. I'm joined by Evertonian fan Jarrod Prosser, all the way from Australia. Jarrod, how's it going?
Doing well, mate. Friday night here, as we said off camera. Yeah, I'm enjoying my Friday night. I tell you what, I'm glad I'm coming in right behind a TalkSport guy and a guy who sits on his underwear watching Star Trek Picard. It's good to know you. Good to know where you fit into these jigsaws, you know?
Right. It's not a high level at all, dude. You'll be fine. The bar is extremely low. So, Jarrod, we've obviously been friends for a while now, and we did this season preview together at the beginning of the season. And one of the things that we talked about was Everton, and you were a little bit worried about Everton. So, first question I'll ask is, has anything changed? Do you still think Everton are going to be in a relegation battle come the end of the season? What are your expectations now as we go 6-7 games into the season for the rest of the season going forward?
Oh, Gavin, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit here, but my big concerns with Everton were defensive depth and forward. Well, not even forward depth. I mean, we didn't even have a little shallow 5 mil puddle for forwards. But Calvert-Lewin is healthy, God forbid, touch the wood, all that sort of thing, and scoring goals. Beto has been a godsend. He reminds me so much of Paolo Wanchop. Just big, long, really physical, really quick, but really awkward as well. Not necessarily the greatest touch, not necessarily the greatest finisher. But as a defender, he would be a freaking nightmare to come up against. He would just batter and bruise you for 70 minutes, and then you come on and you get Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who for a little while was looking like the second best striker in England. So I'm much more confident with Everton's forward line now. Oh, and also we don't have Neil Maupay. That helps. I've always been a big fan of Jack Harrison, so I'm glad that he's gotten his debut out the way now. Danjuma, I've been a little disappointed with him. He seems to be a guy who looks the part but doesn't quite have the end product. James Garner has finally taken a step up, and Onana is a gem. He's an $80 million player. He is an absolute gem. And the big thing, and God bless him because I love him, but Michael Keane is not a regular starter now. Jared Branthwaite is in, and he's a freaking Rolls Royce. He is a brilliant, brilliant defender. So the worry for me is that as much as I'd love to see Everton go on a cup run, either cup, I just want to win something again. The last time we won something, was almost 30 years ago. I worry about our depth still. We are not we've got 14 players, 15 players at best. Aside from that, we're running out a whole bunch of untried players or guys who have been tried and have proven to be no good. Andre Gomes and these sorts of guys. So the injuries, the suspensions will come, but at the same time, I don't think Everton are playing for 18th anymore. I think we're probably playing for 14th, 15th. And quite frankly, after the last few seasons, I will take that anonymity of 14th or 15th just to not have to stress about the last game of the season and slowly rebuild from there. I am worried about the ownership situation, both the current and potential new owners, but it'd be great to get Mashiri out, but at the same time, are we going from frying pan to fire? I don't know. But yeah, look, I think Everton are in a far better place than what they were when we spoke, what was it, 8 weeks ago when we did the preview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Looking at Everton since the start of the season, like apart from the Villa game, I think yous were in every single game he's played. With a chance of getting something out. Even the Arsenal game, he's only lost 1-0. I've the one thing I keep saying, I keep bringing up is Deutsch ball. And it's not the prettiest thing to look at, but if you can get the players to buy into it, it's effective.
It's very effective. It is very, very effective. And you're dead right. I mean, the first 2 games of the season, I looked at those and thought, if we can get 4 points out of those, that's going to send us, a long way towards where we want to be. Bernd Leno turned into Lev Yashin for 90 minutes. And then we play Wolves and Jose Sarr turns into an octopus. There was one save he did off a deflected shot that bounced, and he was on the way down. And I mean, as you know, I'm a former goalkeeper, so I look at the technical side of what the keepers do. He was on his way down and managed to tip it over the bar, and I thought, that is fucking extraordinary. It was one of those games where straight away, it was 0-0 at the time, but it was straight away you went, we're losing this. If they're pulling out saves like this, they are going to get a goal from somewhere, and we can't hit a cow's ass with a banjo. Getting better when getting DCL back and getting some players around him, getting Harrison fit, James Garner's in form, Danjuma's settled in, getting McNeil back. He's really underrated. Suddenly we actually look like we can finish off the chances that we're creating, because we do create chances outside of the Arsenal game where we kind of thought, well, let's just go for 7% possession and see whether we can nick a goal from a corner, which almost worked. But aside from that, you're right. The Villa game, we were battered, but we were awful. And the Arsenal game was it was almost like the most undiluted dice ball you can possibly get. And it almost came off. If we came away with a draw, hey, great, it works. It's ugly, but it was effective. Didn't work, so be it. We're playing Arsenal. We don't expect to win anyway. Yeah.
I know, when at the beginning of the season, when I looked at the fixture list, and obviously the Burnley game had been rearranged. When I looked at it and seen those 3 games together of Wolves, Everton, and Burnley, I was like, okay, we need 7 points out of them games. So far, we've got 1, which means we need to win the next 2. I'm actually pretty confident going to Goodison Park, and I'll tell you the reason why. I think that if Luton can do what teams used to do to us all those years back in the National League, in the conference, of keeping us quiet for 20 minutes, not letting us get on the score sheet, and frustrating us to a certain extent, not letting us create anything, the crowd got on our players' backs. And I think at Goodison, I think that's a real possibility with everything that's still going on with the club of, are they going to be sold, or is there going to be investment? What's going on? I think if we can start the game the way we did against Wolves for those first 20 minutes, I think we can nick something from Everton. I really, really do.
Yeah, look, Luton, I'll lay my cards on the table. I don't think Luton are good enough to stay up. I just don't think you've got the quality. Having said that, I think the club acknowledge that and are buying the right sort of players to maybe launch another attempt next year and consolidate from there, use the money, the parachute payments and all that to build a longer term success, which is the right way to do it. If you don't look beyond your nose, you become Everton, effectively. So I think Luton are building the right way, even if it means a relatively meek relegation this season. But you are right in that if the Hatters can come in and frustrate Everton, everybody talks about the cauldron of Goodison Park, how it's one of the grand old, and it is one of the old traditional grand stadiums of British and world football. The crowd there can be a 12th man for the Toffees, but if things aren't going their way, the Everton crowd are pretty discerning. They won't hesitate to get on their guys if they think that they're not doing the right things or not putting the right effort or not being effective. So if you can frustrate, it's not so much frustrating the team, I think. If you can frustrate the crowd, then they can get on the players, and that, suddenly that weighs on their shoulders, and everything, a chance gets snatched at and all those, and it just builds from there. So you are right. That's the way for Luton to steal a point, potentially 3 here. It'll be interesting to see what the crowd does, though, because if Everton didn't have these 2 wins, particularly the Villa win, then, does that mean the crowd give the 11 on the pitch more leeway? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think the last 2 results will have done you favors, because I think the crowd will be more willing to, as you said, give the players some leeway when it comes to the fact that they won the last 2 games. Albeit one in league, one in cup, but they're doing pretty well. I just
wins are wins.
Yeah, it wins a win. At the end of the day, no matter what competition it's in. But for me, the Wolves game, for me, showed the positives and the negatives of Luton. I thought the first 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, we were fantastic. And then Wolves, we had a stoppage in the game, a set-up Wolves stoppage, which just seemed to kill our momentum completely. To me, those first 20, 25 minutes, if we can do that against Everton, then I think we're in with a chance. And the reason I say that is because of, given he plays the same team, I'm hoping he plays the same team he did against Wolves. Dowdy and Ogbene down the left-hand side, I think, will absolutely give Young and Gardner, if Gardner plays on the right, nightmares. Like Young will not be able to deal with Ogbene, and I think that's where Luton have to play to their strengths in the Everton game. I'm quietly confident in this game, but at the same point, I'm quietly not confident, just because I know how much of a threat Dominic Calvert-Lewin is. And I think it would go without saying that if I was to ask you who's the one player for Everton that, to you could be the game changer, it's going to be Calvert-Lewin, right?
Yeah, I honestly don't think DCL starts, though. The fact that he started in the cup games says to me that it'll be Beto starting. But at the same time, like I said, Beto, he is a good finisher, not a great one, but he's just a nightmare to play against. He's the sort of guy that brings everybody else in. There's a reason that Doucouré looks so good with Beto there compared to DCL. DCL's a finisher, and Beto is if you want to use the football manager parlance, he's the complete forward. He does bits of everything. I also don't think Ashley Young's going to start. I get the feeling Patterson will probably start, partly because of the threat that you guys have on the left, but also it's the fact that a lot of Ashley Young starting comes from his set-piece delivery, and his set-piece delivery has been woeful this season. So he's been taken off corner duty and free kick duty. So if he's not there to provide you free kicks, outside of good veteran leadership in the locker room, which he does provide, what is he there for? Patterson's just a better footballer. So I get the feeling Patterson's probably going to start this game. But if Young does start, I share your worry. And Ashley Young, consummate professional that he has been, he's 38 years old, and you can time his movements with a sundial right now. So he does worry me at fullback. Either side, left or right.
And what have you made of Luton's start to the season? Obviously, looking out from afar, not actually a Luton Town fan, but just as a new team in the Premier League, and I know someone who follows the game closely. What have you made of our start of the season, and what do you think? Like you've already said, you don't think they're going to stay up, but what do you think the expectations should be for Luton?
Well, the expectations, I've got to admit, the first few games worried me. Couple of big thumpings. I mean, you lost to a bunch of shit kickers by 3 goals in Chelsea. It's horrible. We'll just let the Chelsea joke sink in for a sec there. The loss to Exeter in the Milk Cup hurts as well. But, it's almost like there was a little bit of sticker shock in those first few games where you've gone, this really is a different level. You look at the results in September, even the Exeter loss, I don't think you've had the draw against Wolves, but I think every loss has been by 1 goal. It's been by the odd goal. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you found a way to tighten games, to strangle games to a degree, and that's what you're going to have to do to eke out points. You will have a little bit of a glut of home games. More home games than away games, obviously, with Kenilworth Road, losing games at the start of the season. So that will help you as well, because as much as there will be plenty of players that have played in plenty of British players who've played in, lower league level stadiums. It might be like bloody Wraith Rovers up in Scotland or something. There's going to be a lot of guys in the Premier League who the worst stadium they've played at has been a 40,000 seat stadium built 15, 20 years ago. And it's going to be something where it is a new experience for them. And some will embrace that, some will shrink under it. So you've got to use Kenilworth Road a lot. I think that Luton's September is hopefully what they can continue with, where they can at least push teams closely. Obviously not their next game. I'd be happy to see a 5-0 Tonking in that one, if you don't mind, Gav. But
not happening.
But it's one of those where I think you might be finding a little bit of a method. And we spoke off air about formations and those sort of things. And looking back at some of these Luton games, you seem to be making tweaks. It's not like sometimes there's wholesale changes to the formation, but there always seems to be a little tweak. Sometimes it's a legitimate back five. Sometimes it's a back three with your wing backs pushing right up. Sometimes you've got a flat front three. Sometimes you've got the two wider players dropping in to almost be, dual number 10s. I've seen you play a legit 4-5-1. You played a few games with 4 at the back. So I'm wondering whether Rob Edwards is not so much finding his 11, but finding his system, and then he can build the 11 around that. I hope it doesn't take him too long, because we see it all the time in the Premiership where good managers who bring their teams up from the Championship become victims of their own success, where they bring a side that probably shouldn't make it on talent alone, gets into the Premiership, gets found out, and then it's like, oh, well, this guy can't manage anymore. We need a Sam Allardyce type, let's bring in a firefighter. And then you end up losing the reason that made you, one of the major reasons that made you what you are. So I'm hoping that the club, in line with what I see of Luton, which is a really long-term focus, keep Rob Edwards, even if you end up getting 15 points this season, let him have another shot in the Championship and see whether he can build something longer term. Also, he's just an exceptionally handsome man, and I enjoy looking at his face.
I'm sure that'll go down well. I can honestly say I do not see any situation this season us going down, no matter how many points we get. I don't see any situation this season where Rob Edwards gets fired. I just don't see how.
I hope so.
And I think that's a consensus among the majority of Luton fans, and definitely the majority of Luton fans with half a brain cell. Of course, losing hurts. Losing does hurt. But, given what he's done, I think he deserves this year, and then he deserves the beginning of next year, and see how it goes from there. The one thing that I think, they talked about it during the preseason, where he came in, he took over from Nathan Jones when Nathan Jones went to Southampton. He came in, he basically turned around to the players and said, "We're getting promoted this season," and the players were like, "Okay." They bought into it, and that's how he did it. He didn't tell the media, he didn't come out in the media and say. He just told the players in the locker room, "Look, you're good enough to get promoted. We're getting promoted this season." I wonder if maybe he was saying that to motivate the players, but didn't actually think it was a real possibility, because I think the players that he's brought in the summer, I think, play more to a style of play that he wants to play in the Championship and get them used to it before coming back up into the Premier League. Like you mentioned, tactics there and formations. I think we played a 4 at the back. I think majority of it's been 5 at the back, or at least 3, and then 2 wing backs. There has been times where it's been 5-4-1 with Carlton Morris being as the lone striker. There's been times where it's looked like a 3-4-3, definitely when we're going forward, and definitely against Wolves last week with Dowdy and Ogbenny on the left and Brown and Kabore on the right. I think he's still tweaking with the formation. I think he's tweaking with the formation because, as you said, I think he has the 11 he wants to play, or the 11 he wants to play, but it's about finding the right shape and the right system to get those 11 players onto the pitch, and to get them to get them to influence the game the best way they possibly can. In saying that, there's been certain signings from the offseason that haven't worked yet. I'm probably still betting into the team a little bit. Been very disappointed with Ryan Giles as someone who was brought in as, he's a fantastic crosser of the ball. Haven't actually seen that yet. It's obviously going to take a while with him and the strikers to form a partnership and to get that understanding. I get that. And that's why I think we're willing to or at least I'm willing to go, okay, well, it's still a learning curve. We're only 6 games into the season. It's still a learning curve. Been very disappointed with Tahith Chong. Great technically on the ball, can show that he's got pace and get forward, but when he loses the ball, there doesn't seem to be anything there. 50-50 tackles, he's going to lose. He gets pushed off the ball far too easily. And in the last game against Wolves, Lakonga came in and played in that second midfielder position with Nakamba. And it looked a lot more solid. I mean, you look at Wolves' goal, I think they had 1, maybe 2 shots on target the whole game. But you look at Wolves' goal, it came from down our own end, us losing possession, them breaking quickly and just a long ball over the top, and our defender making a mistake. And that's how their goal came. Now, that's not necessarily the way Wolves play. That is the way, at least the way I look at it, that is the way Everton play. Everton aim for that long ball and then try to push your midfielders up to help the striker. And I think that's why you guys, if anything, will cause us problems this week.
Yeah, and that is the way that Beto plays as well. Like, Everton do tend to play a lot more on the floor when you've got Calvert-Lewin in there. But yeah, with Beto, they do realise he's a 6'4" man mountain who loves to play with his back to goal. So yeah, they do. And again, it comes down to that Dyche Ballian, battering ram of let's just pulverise this defence. And if we can tire him out, great. If we can score some goals, even better. But we know we're going to have a bunch of quick guys coming on at the end. On to Tahith Chong, not necessarily him as a player, but he's the exact sort of player that Luton should be looking for. Young, pedigreed, some Premier League experience. It might not be him. He strikes me as the sort of guy who might do better at a team like, say, well, not necessarily Palace because they're a bit dour, but, like a Fulham or something like that where he's got a bit more quality around him. But I think he's the sort of profile that you should be looking for, where there is some pedigree there, and can you turn him into someone who is at worst a new Neil Shipley, Clinton Morrison type, where he's too good for the Championship but not quite good enough for the Premiership. Those guys tend to have pretty good resale value as well. The other thing with Chong, I love his hair.
Yeah,
there's 2 guys who we're
thin on top.
We're fighting the good fight, but we're not necessarily winning. Seeing hair like that just makes me smile. And this is something I only learned today, Gav. Tahith Chong's full name is glorious. Do you know his full name?
No, I don't. Do I want to know it?
I'm going to for you, and I might mispronounce the third name here, but Tahith Jose Gigi Gorio Jorkaeff Chong. Like, that is glorious.
That is a hell of a name.
That is utterly glorious.
Right?
Yeah. Like,
we have another player like that.
Mate, I'd let him wear a tarp onto the field just to get that whole name on there. Like, that is fantastic. Like, I literally only went this like 3 or 4 hours ago, and I'm like, oh, mate, that's superb. I'm not going to find a better fact than that to learn today.
With him, I think it's so he tore us apart. I think it was 2 seasons ago in the Championship for Birmingham. He absolutely tore us apart, and I think that was why a lot of Luton Town fans were really high on him coming in this season. I think he started the season decently, if not great. He's fantastic on the ball. Like, there's no doubt in my mind he's like, his technical ability is definitely there. But you can't get pushed off the ball as easy as he does. He needs to put on some muscle. But the downside of that is, if you put on muscle, are you going to lose other aspects of this game? So then is it just a case of maybe trying to fit him in somewhere? And I actually think right-hand side where Jacob Brown played might not be a bad show.
Yeah, see, I tend to disagree with that. Like, that's very much a sort of 1980s, 1990s view that you either need to be small and wispy and quick, or big and muscly and stout. There are ways to add strength. Like, sports science is so phenomenally advanced from where it was. I hurt my back pretty badly in 1997, and the rehab that I did, I remember saying that to a physio, because I hurt my back again back in 2018. might have been 17 actually. And I remember saying to the physio what I got, told to do to rehab my back. And this physio's jaw hit the floor. Like literally everything I got told. And this was by a physio from a professional sports team. This was like when I was still playing basketball. Literally everything that physio told me to do was wrong. So in 2 decades, sports science has gone from here to here. So I think there are ways for Chong to add strength, and I'm sure that Luton are doing the right things and telling him to add strength here and add core strength here, put strength through your hips, all those sort of things. Part of it comes down to effort, and the clips I've seen of him is that when he's on it's much easier to run with the ball. And an old soccer coach of mine, old football coach of mine used to say, it's much easier to run with the ball than without it. And he seems to be the epitome of that. When he's got the ball, he's full of energy. When he loses it, he stops. I think it's more a mental thing than a physical thing with him right now. And that might change. Maybe that's what he's going to be, and he's going to top out as a good championship player because he doesn't have the discipline. I don't know. But, yeah, I honestly don't necessarily think it's a physical thing. Yeah, he's not going to be, he's not going to be prime Sergio Busquets as far as ball winning or anything like that. But I think he can be better than he is, and I think it starts there.
It's going to be interesting this weekend because obviously Lukonga got injured, so he's out. He's not playing this weekend. It's going to be interesting to see who Edwards partners with Nakamba, because one of the things that in the Chelsea game that I was very adamant about was that what you've just said about Chong, where easier to run with the ball than without it. I seen a lot of that in Ross Barkley, and honestly, at the time, I put it down to the fact that how long has it been since he played? Like he's been with the club for 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Maybe it's just that, and like a couple of the goals, I even pointed out to the lads that I do the podcast with. I'm like, it was Barkley's fault. He lost his man. He just didn't track back, and then the cam was left to try and mark 2 people. And I'm because of that, I'm just kind of wondering, because I think that's an area of the pitch where we spent a lot of money. Not a lot of money because it's Luton Town, but we invested in that area of the pitch. Yeah, for us, we invested quite heavily in that area of the pitch. We brought in Chong, we brought in Barkley, we brought in Lukonga, we brought in Nakamba, and honestly, right now, apart from Nakamba, who I think is fantastic in the role that he plays and sitting in front of the back in the back 3 or back whatever it may be, I don't see who you play alongside him right now. I don't think Pelly's up to the task. Chong and Barkley are too lightweight. I'm wondering if he maybe sticks a Berry in there, but again, it's Berry. Like, nothing against the guy; he's been a fantastic servant, but is he Premier League level? That's the area of the pitch that worries me on Saturday.
Well, I can straight out tell you that as someone, Barkley's 29 now, and you mentioned the word lightweight with him. He's not lightweight; he's strong, but he is the epitome of the chase starts in between your ears, and he's never chased. Yeah, remember, he was the golden boy for Everton. He was the next
Wayne Rooney.
Not in position and style, obviously, but he was the next golden boy for Everton. He was the next kid to come out of Belfield, out of Finch Farm, that was going to take the club forward. And wonderfully, wonderfully talented footballer, but he has never chased a cause in his life. I can straight out tell you that. I don't think I've ever seen him put in a last-ditch tackle or get back to cut off a pass, or even just to be in position to make an opposition player think about, well, maybe I shouldn't pass there. He may as well be made of smoke when your team doesn't have the ball. You can just go straight through him. So, you're not going to get anything defensive out of Ross Barkley. That is just that's the price of getting in the Ross Barkley business. Brilliant on the ball, can score you a nice goal, good eye for a pass, but gives you nothing going backwards.
I think that's if you want to get him into the team, you've got to find then a system or a formation that's going to allow him maybe as off the striker, where he doesn't have to track back as much. I don't know, but you've got to find a position for him, because I think, as you said, technically on the ball, I think he's probably one of the better players we have. But if he's not going to track back, he's not going to buy into that system, then there's no point in having him there, because we're going to be under the cosh a lot this season.
Yeah, I think as a number 10 is his best position. a number 10 that maybe drops deep because he's got that ability to pick a long pass. But I think as a number 10, playing off a single striker is actually his best role. But, is Edwards wanting to play a 4-4-1-1 or something like that? I don't know where he is. He seems to want to play with some variation of 3 up front. And if that's the case, great. But where does that leave Barkley? Because he's not a striker. He's not a forward. He's certainly not a winger. So I don't know where that leaves Barkley outside of a situational player.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, as you said, he's not a striker, but even if he was, he's not getting in ahead of the strikers that we have right now in Morris and Adebayo. Not for me, anyway. I think they suit the system.
I just want to make a point on Carlton Morris. I think he's really good. I really like Carlton Morris. Very, very when he came in, coming into the season, I thought, is he going to be, I mentioned the name Clinton Morrison before. Is he going to be Clinton Morrison where he's going to eat up the championship and get 3 goals a season in the premiership? He's much better than I gave him credit for. He's a really, really good footballer. I would love to see him playing for, to name a club like a Fulham or something like that, or a Palace. He's the sort of guy that doesn't need a lot of chances. Palace might be the perfect club for him because he doesn't need a lot of chances to score. And, at a club like Palace, you don't get many chances, especially with Uncle Roy managing him. You're not going to create a lot. So I would love to see him. If you guys get relegated, I can see him getting snapped up for a healthy chunk of change. I think he's a premiership player, a genuine premiership player.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying this last season. I was surprised that some of the bottom teams in the Premier League weren't coming in from at that point. And obviously we would have done everything in our power to hold on to him. But it's one of these things where at the beginning of the season, I looked back over all those goals from last season, just to see, okay, what's the connection? What's on repeat? What's he doing a lot? And you're expecting to see, he scores a lot of goals with his right foot, or he scores a lot of goals with his left foot, or he scores a lot of goals in the air. And that's why I was kind of looking for, to see, okay, what do we have to do to help him score in the Premier League this season? And honestly, I couldn't find one. He scores with his left, he scores with his right, he's good in the air. Last season with Calvert-Lewin going down all the time, I was surprised that someone like Everton didn't take a gamble on him and go, okay, you know what, we're gonna go for this.
We got no money.
Yeah, I know. You have no money.
We got zero.
How's that working out for you?
It's
actually weird. It's weird being in a league and being like, you know what? We've actually got more money than some teams, and be it it's Everton and they can't really spend money on anyone. But it's just weird.
You've got more money than a team that, when the Premiership started, when football started in 1992, we were the second most successful club in the history of the British game, or of the English game. I won't say the British game because there'll be a bunch of old firm people who would torch my house now.
SPL. I'll say it for you. The SPL doesn't count.
Mickey Mouse League. And suddenly the League of Ireland people are getting all riled up about Shamrock.
Hey! No! We're not British.
No, that is a very, very good point. See, that's why they're going to get riled up, because suddenly
just because you still pledge an oath to the Queen doesn't mean we do.
The Queen?
The King. Sorry, the King now, isn't it?
He died. A little aside here. This is many, many years ago when I used to be a cyclist. There's like a charity ride that goes on in Melbourne where it's like a 50K ride. You go over the big bridge it's a fun little thing. A bunch of us who are all cyclists did it. And this one was being held on St. Patrick's Day. It's always on a Sunday in March when it's not too hot. And this was being held on St. Patrick's Day. As part of your registration for this, you get an official T-shirt. And it's always a bright coloured one because, road safety and all that. This one happened to be a really, really bright orange. And my my grandmother, now late grandmother, this is 20 odd years ago, she was still alive, but her parents were Irish. So she's first generation Australian. Her parents are from Tipperary, and she's looked at it and gone, "You're wearing that today?" And I've gone, "I'm really sorry. I wore one of my cycling over the top." But yeah, it's one of those things where she's gone, that's ridiculous. Like she was filthy. And this is a really, really affable lady, and she was fucking furious. Anyway, that's my aside. That's my 2002.
I hope the organizer of that event got fucking fired.
Oh, mate, it's just one of those things where they just would not have thought of it. It just would never have occurred. And the thing is, they could have worn like if you want a bright fluorescent color for road safety, give them like a fluoro green. Sure enough, it's not, Irish, but it's a hell of a lot better than wearing Ulster colors.
Pretty much.
So, yeah.
So we're gonna end the podcast with predictions.
On that note,
but by the way, you've been listening to the Luton Town International Cycling Podcast. But we're gonna end the show with predictions. So, what's your prediction for Saturday, Jarrod?
I'm going to say 2-0 with Beto getting on the board and Beto and Doucouré, both second half goals. 0-0 at the half, 2-0 Everton at the end.
I'm going to go 2-1 Luton. The person who you were just talking about, Carlton Morris, I think gets one. And I'm going to go with the Irish Pele, Ogbene for the other one. But I think right now I just don't think we can stop a team from scoring, which is a little bit of a worry for me. But I think I'm having watched it, I'm just waiting for it to click up front. I think if it clicks, I think we can start picking up points against the lower half teams, as they're so called.
So who scores for Everton in that 2-1?
Probably fucking Calvert-Lewin comes off the bench. It's 2-0 Luton. Calvert-Lewin comes off the bench, scores, and then makes it a really fucking nervous last 15 minutes.
Yeah, 82nd minute goal or something
there
like that.
There you go.
So.
Yeah. And it's like 82nd minute, you think, okay, we've only got to last another 10 minutes. Then they put on an extra fucking 8 minutes or 12 minutes because of all the stoppages nowadays, and every little thing is get counted for.
Hey, just a quick one before we sign off. What do you think of Issa Kabore?
Okay, so he made a mistake against Exeter, and he's come in for a lot of hate about it. I actually think he's been really, really good.
I think so too. I think he's a good player.
Yeah, last season we obviously had James Bree for a lot of the season, and Bree brought his own style of play. He was great at whipping crosses in, and he wasn't very fast, and he didn't go down the wing to the end line and get the ball across, but he had his own way of playing. Then we brought Drame in, Cody Drame, who I actually thought we were going to try sign in the offseason, but apparently he was priced out of a deal. I don't understand that. Leeds are probably Leeds thinking they're still a Premier League team, I think is what it was, and looking for Premier League money when really he's not a Premier League player yet. So I was a little bit worried about the right-hand side, and then Kabore came in and didn't obviously see a lot of him last season in the French League, but has been fantastic this season. Yes, he made a mistake for the goal against Exeter, and yes, he should have just cleared it, but he's decently defensive. Like, defensively, he's decent. He showed that against Mitome of Brighton. He showed that he could hold with him for the majority of the game. And I think going forward, he definitely gives us some. Yeah, for me, the thing he needs to work on is his crossing, because I think at times he's just looking to like hit and hope when he gets to that byline. But yeah,
he puts it to an area. It's like someone run on to
exactly.
It. You get 40 yards,
someone get
put it into an area. Yeah.
And
the thing, sometimes there is, as a fullback, you just need to put a foot in the ball, turn around, and recycle the play.
Yeah.
Great being threatening and getting up the line and putting in crosses and all that. But if you're putting in crosses that are just going to get claimed by the keeper, easy 1-on-0 headed away, you're hoping for a second ball, and that's that's a lottery. Just keep possession. Trust your teammates to do something with it. No, I think he's a good player. Yes, he made a mistake, but ultimately there's something when I coach both basketball and soccer that I always talk about passive turnovers and assertive turnovers. I don't mind if someone tries to do something and screws it up, because that's a learning opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
That's trying to do the right thing and you messed it up. But the mindset's right. When you do a passive turnover, they're the ones I don't like. That was very much an assertive turnover. He tried to do the right thing. You're right. He should have cleared it. But his mindset was, I can make something out of this. And he just fucked it up. It happens.
Yeah. Well, Either way, on Saturday, there's going to be a text going one of two ways. It's either going to be going from you to me or me to you. Unless it's a draw, in which case we'll just both stay quiet. But Jarrod, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for stepping in and covering for the two layabouts who don't want to do podcasts apparently anymore because they're too big for it. And
Gav, it's my pleasure, mate. Anytime you need me, you hit me up.
Best of luck for the rest of the season after Saturday.
And likewise.